The morning light entered quietly through the thin curtains. It touched the edge of the old man's wheelchair and then spread across the floor like a slow wave. Lena drew the curtains open, letting the light fall gently over his face. Mr. Harold sat still, his eyes half closed, his thin hands resting on the blanket covering his knees. He had once been a piano teacher, though now his fingers trembled too much to play. Lena had learned this from one of the nurses who'd worked here longer than her. She often imagined him at a piano, playing softly while the room filled with music instead of silence. Every morning began the same. She'd bring his breakfast, help him sit comfortably, and talk to him even when he didn't answer. "Good morning, Mr. Harold," she said softly. "It's another sunny day. Maybe we'll sit near the window after breakfast." He blinked once, his lips twitching slightly, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't. She smiled anyway. She had learned that care wasn't only about words. It was about presence, small gestures, and patience. The other caregivers rushed from room to room, but Lena liked to move slowly. She believed that the elderly could feel when someone was rushing through their care, just trying to finish a task. She didn't want Mr. Harold to feel like a task. After breakfast, she placed the plate aside and picked up the old radio. The signal crackled. She found an old tune from the 1950s, something light and warm. As it played, Mr. Harold's eyes opened wider. For a brief moment, his expression softened. "You like this one?" she asked. He didn't reply, but his fingers moved slightly against the blanket like they remembered the rhythm. That small movement made her smile. She leaned against the piano in the corner, looked out at the garden, and began to hum quietly along with the song. Her voice was low and untrained, but soft, pure and full of care. The kind of voice that could soothe even silence itself. She didn't know it yet, but that soft morning song would soon reach someone she'd never met. Someone who was watching, unseen. Someone whose life and hers was about to change. After breakfast, Lena wheeled Mr. Harold closer to the window. The sun felt kind that day, not too bright, not too shy. The garden outside moved with small signs of life. A gardener trimmed the hedge. A butterfly passed through a patch of sunlight. Lena began tidying the table, humming as she worked. It was an old tune she had heard as a child, one her mother used to sing while cooking. When she noticed Mr. Harold's head tilt slightly, she smiled. She sang louder, just enough for him to hear. Her voice flowed softly through the room. Each note felt gentle, like a touch of warmth carried by sound. Mr. Harold closed his eyes, his breathing slowed. In the hallway, a man in a dark suit stood quietly. He had come unannounced. Ethan Whitmore had not visited his father in years. Their last conversation had ended with anger and pride. Since then, time had done its quiet damage. He had come now because the doctor had said his father's condition was worsening. He wanted to see him, though he didn't know what to say. As he approached the door, he heard a woman's voice. He paused. The sound was calm and unhurried. He could hear the emotion in every note. When he looked through the half-open door, he saw her, Lena, sitting beside his father, holding his hand as she sang. For a moment, he forgot where he was. The room felt alive in a way he hadn't expected. His father's face, once pale and empty, seemed peaceful. Ethan stayed still, watching quietly. He didn't want to interrupt. When the song ended, Lena adjusted Mr. Harold's blanket and whispered, "You rest now, all right?" He nodded slightly. Ethan stepped back into the hall, his chest heavy with thoughts. He hadn't expected tenderness here. He hadn't expected to feel regret either. He would come back tomorrow. But next time, he wouldn't just watch. Ethan returned the next evening. He carried a small box of fruit, unsure what else to bring. Gifts felt meaningless now, but he needed something to hold. The nurse at the desk nodded as he signed the visitor sheet. "Your father had a good day," she said. "The new caregiver's been wonderful with him." He smiled faintly, remembering the soft voice from yesterday. When he reached the door, it was slightly open again. Lena was inside, humming as she tucked the blanket around Mr. Harold's legs. Mr. Harold's eyes were open this time, following her quietly. "You look better today," she said. He gave the smallest nod. Ethan stepped in. His shoes made a faint sound against the floor. Both of them looked up. "Mr. Whitmore?" she asked politely. He nodded. "Yes, I'm his son." Her face softened. "He's had a calm day. We played music earlier. He seemed to enjoy it. That's good, Ethan said quietly, setting the fruit box on the table. He turned toward his father. Hi, Dad. The old man blinked, eyes trying to focus. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Ethan bent down, touched his father's hand. It's me, Ethan. Lena stood aside, letting the moment belong to them. Silence filled the space, but it was not cold. It was the silence of time passing, the kind that makes people realize how much they've missed. After a while, Lena poured tea into 2 cups and set them on the small table. Would you like some? She asked. Ethan nodded. They sat together while the old man dozed off. She sings for him, Ethan said suddenly. Lena hesitated. Only when he seems restless. It calms him. It helped yesterday, he said. You have a kind voice. Her eyes lowered. It's just something I do. He reminds me of my grandfather. Ethan looked at her then, really looked. There was something steady about her. No makeup, no rush, no pretense, just presence. When he left that night, he turned once more toward the room. She was humming again, head slightly bent, the light from the window falling across her face. He walked down the corridor with a strange heaviness in his chest. Not sadness exactly, something quieter, more uncertain, something that made him want to return. The next week, Lena noticed a change in Mr. Harold. He seemed to respond more when music played. His eyes followed her, his fingers twitched when old songs filled the air. So one morning, she decided to try something new. She wheeled him near the piano that had been untouched for years. Dust rested on its surface like forgotten time. Would you like to try, Mr. Harold? She asked softly. His eyes shifted toward the instrument. She cleaned the keys with a cloth, guided his trembling hand to the first note. The sound was faint, but it rang through the room like a memory waking up. Ethan entered quietly just then. He paused near the door, unnoticed. Lena encouraged the old man. One more key, she said gently. Mr. Harold pressed another note, then another. The tune was broken, but it was something. His lips curved slightly. That's beautiful, Lena whispered. You still remember. Ethan felt something stir in his chest. He hadn't seen his father smile in years. He remembered those same hands teaching him scales as a boy, guiding his fingers across ivory keys. Lena began to hum beside him, filling the gaps between his hesitant notes. Together they formed a fragile melody, part memory, part love. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes before he could stop them. He stepped back, afraid to interrupt. When the short tune ended, Lena said softly, You played wonderfully, Mr. Harold. He looked at her for a long moment, as if searching for a name from another life, then whispered, Thank you. It was the first word Ethan had heard from his father in months. Lena gasped softly, eyes wet. Ethan had to turn away for a moment to steady himself. That afternoon, when Lena went to fetch water, he whispered to his father, She's helping you, Dad. She really is. His father blinked slowly, almost like agreement. From that day, Ethan came often. Sometimes he brought flowers, sometimes books, sometimes just silence. But every visit began with the sound of Lena's quiet humming. The weather changed that week. Rain fell without pause, the wind bending the trees outside. The care home lights flickered as thunder rolled in the distance. Lena stayed late that evening. The storm had upset many of the residents. Some were anxious, others restless. When she reached Mr. Harold's room, she found him staring at the window. Let's move you back, sir, she said. It's cold by the glass. He shook his head faintly. His eyes followed the lightning, his lips moving silently. She pulled a blanket around his shoulders and sat beside him. I'll stay a while, she said softly. The thunder grew louder. She began humming again, the same tune she always used to calm him. It worked. His shoulders relaxed. The tremor in his hand eased. Ethan arrived minutes later, soaked from the rain. He had driven across town when he heard the storm was worsening. He entered quietly, his jacket dripping. Everything all right? He asked. Lena turned, surprised. You shouldn't have come out in this weather. I was worried, he said simply. The lights flickered again. Then they went out. Only the emergency lamp glowed faintly in the corner, casting soft gold across the room. They sat together in the dim light, the sound of rain filling the silence. When a loud crack of thunder shook the building, Mr. Harold startled. His hand slipped, knocking the cup from the table. It shattered. Lena moved quickly to pick up the pieces. As she bent down, her hand caught a shard. Blood appeared across her palm. Ethan grabbed a tissue, knelt beside her. "Let me," he said. He pressed gently on her hand, wrapping it with his handkerchief. "It's fine," she whispered. But his eyes didn't move from her face. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the rain did. When the lights finally came back, Mr. Harold was asleep, his breathing steady. Ethan and Lena sat quietly by the bed. The storm outside softened, leaving behind a calm that felt almost sacred. Days passed gently after the storm. Mr. Harold seemed calmer, though weaker. His voice had returned only once more when he asked Lena to sing for him. That morning, the doctor had warned Ethan that his father might not have much time left, so Ethan stayed by his side, not as a businessman, but as a son. Lena entered quietly, carrying tea. She smiled softly at both men. "Good morning, Mr. Harold." He looked at her, his eyes clearer than usual. "Sing," he whispered. She sat beside him, took his frail hand, and began to sing the song he liked most. "The one from the window." Ethan watched them, unable to speak. The sound filled the room like light. When the song ended, Mr. Harold reached toward Ethan. His fingers brushed the edge of his son's sleeve. "Good boy," he whispered faintly. "Take care of her." Ethan froze. Lena looked down, not understanding. The old man smiled once more and closed his eyes. His hand went still in hers. The room was silent. Only the clock ticked softly. Ethan stood there for a long time, his hand still over his father's. Later, the lawyer arrived. There was a sealed letter and a folder with his father's handwriting. When Ethan opened it, he found a will, updated only weeks before his passing. Among the gifts and instructions, one line stood out: "To Miss Lena Hart, whose kindness brought music back into my days, I leave a small house by the lake. May she find peace there." Lena stared at the paper, unable to speak. "I can't accept this," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "He wanted you to. He meant it." Her eyes filled with tears. "He gave me more than that already." He remembered how to smile. Ethan looked at her, his voice quiet. "He gave me that too." Months passed. Spring arrived early that year. The house by the lake was small, painted white with green shutters. It stood near the water where lilies grew. Birds called from the trees each morning. Lena had moved there after everything was settled. She worked part-time at a local clinic, tended to flowers, and kept the piano that had belonged to Mr. Harold. Sometimes in the evenings, she would sit by the window and sing softly to the water. The sound drifted across the lake like a gentle secret. One afternoon, she heard a familiar car stop outside. Ethan stepped out holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "You found the place," she said, smiling. "I needed to see it," he replied. "It's beautiful." They sat on the porch, the sun warm on their faces. "I've been thinking," Ethan said after a pause. "My father's foundation is funding a small care project in the city. We're naming it after him. I'd like you to help run it." Lena looked at him, surprised. "Me?" "You're the reason he remembered joy," he said simply. "You changed his last days." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "If it helps more people like him, I'll do it." He smiled. Then it settled. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the sound of the lake touching the shore. Before leaving, Ethan said softly, "You know, he was right." "About what?" she asked. "About taking care of you." Her cheeks warmed. She looked away, smiling faintly. When he drove off, Lena stood there for a long time, watching the sunlight fade over the water. Later that evening, she opened the piano. Her fingers pressed the first note, then another, then the old familiar tune. Her voice filled the small house, calm and unhurried. Outside, the lake shimmered, carrying her song into the soft wind. Somewhere in that sound, it felt as if Mr. Harold was listening too. The caregiver sang softly once more. Her life forever changed by a kindness she had never expected to be seen.